Hey folks, everything new under the sun. The Cassandra Prophecy. Have you heard of this one? This is interesting because there is some relation to the year 2023, and it has to do with the return of Jesus, apparently. We're going to take a look at this and kind of decide if it's valid or not. And we're going to start here. This is in Mark chapter 13. And it's speaking of the destruction of the temple and signs of the end time. So this is around the time, obviously, when Jesus was alive and he was speaking to disciples. And they asked Jesus, as Jesus was leaving the temple, and the disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings." So the temple was standing, of course, at that time. It says, "Do you see all these great buildings? Not one stone will be left upon another. Every one will be thrown down." Now, we spoke about this before, but let me skip down here to verse 14. Jesus said to the disciples, "When you see the abomination that causes desolation, the abomination of desolation, standing where it does not belong, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." So Jesus is speaking at about 30 AD, 28 AD, whatever it may be, when he was exactly speaking these words to the disciples. And he's there. The temple is standing. And he's speaking about a future time when the temple is torn down and the abomination of desolation occurs. So that was when Jesus was on the earth. That was not BC. That was not years BC, years before Christ. It was Christ talking to the disciples about this future event when you see these, when you see the abomination of desolation. And the suggestion is that the disciples would see this in their lifetime, not necessarily speaking to us, you and I, 2,000 years into the future, whatever it may be, but speaking to the disciples about a future event. Now, what is the common understanding of the abomination of desolation? Well, this has got questions, and so the question is, Jesus spoke at his coming about the abomination of desolation in the Olivet Discourse. Jesus says, "So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel standing in the holy place, let those in Judea flee to the mountains." And so it describes an abomination is something that causes disgust or hatred, and desolation is a state of complete emptiness or destruction. So here's the common understanding of this, of course. The sentence is cut off, but it says Daniel's prophecy, this is where it's spoken of about the abomination of desolation. Daniel's prophecy about the abomination of desolation seemed to have at least partial fulfillment, they admit, in 167 BC. So you look at that date, and that was before Christ. That was before Jesus was on the earth. If I scrunch it up there, you can see it there. Fulfillment 167 BC. So before Christ. So the abomination happened before Christ. But in Mark 13, he seems to be suggesting that's yet a future event when he is speaking to the disciples. So this is where the question comes in. When is the abomination of desolation? Is there a dual fulfillment of it? One that happened prior to Christ and one that's going to happen after he was speaking these things to the disciples in Mark? Well, come along this Cassandra Prophecy and some interesting ideas, and it talks about this abomination of desolation. So let me just go like that. There we go. Now, you don't have to follow along, but off to the side, you see the Dome of the Rock, and that's what this is going to be speaking about. It says it starts off by saying there are four stumbling blocks that have kept mankind and scholars from understanding the book of Revelation, and he sets these four as number one: believers and biblical scholars spend their times interpreting and reinterpreting scriptures to convince themselves that they either get the blessings promised of Israel, or they will be raptured right before the tribulation. And I agree to both of that. Everybody who looks at the Bible prophecy says, you know what, it must be happening in my lifetime. We either get the blessings of Israel, and that's called the idea of replacement theory, or we are raptured right before the tribulation. Then the question is, what does the tribulation mean? Does it mean the 70 period? Does it mean are we raptured before the wrath of God? And when does the wrath of God start? Is it the whole period of 7 years? He goes on, number two, the year of the second coming could not be verified until latter half of the 20th century. Number three, Christians incorrectly believe Mark 13 is a commandment by God that no one is allowed to know something that even the angels in heaven don't know. God told Daniel the year not the day or the hour, he says. And then he says, number 4, an error about the 1400 years. Now we're going to take a look at that, the error about the 1400 years. It says, an error was made in the 7th century BC concerning an event that ranks as one of the most important in the history of the Jews, Christians, and Muslims, the abomination of desolation. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice. So, of course, they remove the temple, they destroy the temple. And they shall place an abomination that maketh desolate. They're going to place something that is an abomination to the temple of God, the house of God, and they're going to make it desolate for a long period of time. That is until the third temple. So James Hastings, in the 7th century, published a dictionary of the Bible, and he concluded that the verses refers to the setting up by Antiochus Epiphanes of a small altar on the altar of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, 167 BC. So again, this understanding out of Daniel 11 suggests that this happened before Christ. But we see Christ, again, Jesus in Mark 13, speaking of a future event when you see, speaking of the disciples, when you see the abomination of desolation. This is Jesus. This is not a prophecy given to Moses on tablets or something. This is Jesus speaking to the disciples about a future event, the abomination of desolation. So it goes on. Again, the timing is everything here, and it's very interesting. See thou those great buildings, it says, and this is straight out of Mark 13, there shall be not left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And of course, the temple was standing at this point as he was talking to the disciples. Here Jesus is prophesying an event that is to take place within the lifetime of his disciples. August 29th in 70 AD, the exact same day the Babylonians burned down Solomon's temple 657 years earlier, the Roman army razed or burned Herod's temple to the ground. So the whole Temple Mount, that's known as Herod's temple there, or the fort there. As Jesus places the event of abomination after the destruction of the temple, so not 167 years before Christ, but 70 AD after this 70 AD, which is after the birth of Christ, 70 years after year 0 or year 1 of the Gregorian calendar, rather. And he says, when ye shall see, Mark 13:14, he places that abomination of desolation in the future. Now we take that to mean that, well, that hasn't happened yet, that the abomination of desolation is going to occur after they set up the third temple. Well, it's possible it could have occurred before that. It is impossible the abomination spoken of by Jesus could have taken place prior to 70 AD, and therefore any exegesis that identifies the abomination as 167 years before Christ is error made over 1400 years ago. And again, this is what most of us understand in the modern world about Bible prophecy, i.e. the abomination of desolation happening prior to Jesus. Jesus then himself predicts the location of the abomination will be somewhere that is not only a place, but also a place that under normal circumstances would be forbidden. So it's not just a regular old place that people are going to trample on, build houses on, etc. It is a place that is going to be forbidden. It's a holy place, and it's going to be forbidden. And of course, are the Jews forbidden to walk on the Temple Mount? They are. They're very scared that they're going to walk on the holy place, the holy altar. So they try not to go anywhere near where they think it stood. So so the construction of the abomination of desolation started in 668 AD. So after the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ. This is again on the Gregorian 668. And this is referring to the Mosque of Omar. On the death of Abu Bakr, Omar ibn al-Khattab, advisor to Muhammad, became the second caliph and ordered that in a magnificent golden domed mosque, that's what you see on the side there. Let's see. Islam's third holy shrine be built directly over the most holy place in Jerusalem, it says. The most holy place. So is this basically an abomination of desolation This is what the suggestion is here. The Mosque of Omar, the Dome of the Rock, is the correct identification of the abomination of desolation. Have we been missing that the whole time? I think it's very interesting. A thing to think about. Applying the date of 688 AD to the book of Daniel, which is speaking about the abomination, and the days after it, it comes up with a very interesting understanding of Bible prophecy. And from the time that and this is reading in purple, and it's the time of the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1290 days. Daniel 12:11. Blessed is he that waiteth, and cometh to the 1335 days in Daniel 12:12. Biblical scholars acknowledge the words of Ezekiel, who wrote 30 years before Daniel. And what did Ezekiel say? I have appointed thee each day for a year, using each day for a year, and from the time that the daily sacrifices shall be taken away, the destruction of the temple, and the abomination set up, in 668 there shall be 1290 years. Again, translating that to years. Page is reloading on me. It says 1290 years. Blessed is he that waiteth for the Messiah, and cometh to the 1335th year, or 2023. So 668, the creation of the Mosque of Omar, the Dome of the Rock, adding 1335 years to it, is the year 2023. That's an interesting date, isn't it? An interesting year. And by the way, if you say no Christians can know when the Lord's going to return, I don't necessarily buy that. I accept that it's no man knows the day or the hour. But again, by that fact, I accept that no man knows the day or the hour. It doesn't mean you can't know the season, maybe the year, maybe the period of time that it's in, maybe the festivals that it happens around or on. No one simply knows the day or the hour. By the way, Rosh Hashanah in Jewish tradition is known as the festival where no man knows the day or the hour, because it's held over a period of 48 hours, 2 days. It's related to the recognition of the new moon. You need 2 witnesses, and the 2 witnesses, the priests, stand up and they watch for this new moon. They both have to agree that they see the sliver of the new moon to announce that that Rosh Hashanah has started. And therefore, it's the festival where no man knows the day or the hour, because it could happen on the first day or the second day. They don't know when they're going to agree to and see the new moon. So again, it's known as that. It goes on. What these 2 verses are saying is that the Jewish people will lose their place of worship, including the city of Jerusalem. This happened, of course. It will be given over to non-Jewish people, Gentiles, Muslims, until the first few hours of the 6-day war in 1967. So you do 668 AD plus 1279, when for the first time since the capture of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple by Titus in 70 AD, the Jewish people not only had their own state, May 14th, 1948, which is AD 688 plus 1260 days or years, they once again controlled the most holy place in Jerusalem, the Temple Mount. and they control it effectively to this day. The stewardship of it is owned by Jordan, and the Jordanian Waqf kind of manages the Temple Mount, but it is under a general military sovereign control, if you will, of Israel. So the prophet Daniel, the book of Revelation, and Paracelsus, in the 29th figure of his prognostications, confirms the year 2023. So this is the interesting math that goes into it. How blessed shall be the hour and the poverty that will come, and shall ordain each one to its meadow, not far from the year. And he writes the year XXXIII. Now X is 10, obviously, and so it refers to XX is 20, and another XX is 2020. So 2020 and then 3. And that's where this comes from. Now, it's incorrect Roman numerals to write it that way, but that's apparently how he wrote it. It says most of the prognostications of Paracelsus concern countries, institutions, establishments, and monarchies. Figure 29, and he's referring to the book by Ian Gurney, the Cassandra Prophecy, refer to the individual and particular to a state of change that each individual can reach. It says the date given at the end is confusing since there is no such Roman numeral. 43 in Roman numerals would be XLIII. That would generally be the year 43. It says the fact that Paracelsus tells us that the year is the clue to the correct interpretation of the figure. Could Jesus then return in the year 2023? XX20, XX20, and then 3. So 2023. So there's some speculation there, but there is some interesting math there as it relates to the Dome of the Rock. Maybe that is the abomination of desolation. Would that fit better with what Jesus was speaking of to his disciples at that time, and that the fact that the abomination of desolation was a future event, not a past event, or before Christ, BC? So you let me know in the comments what you think about that. I think it's interesting. I think we're getting close to the very last days, and it could very well be. We don't know. We're just watching, waiting. We're waiting for the return of the Lord. We're looking up because our redemption is drawing nigh. And again, interesting that this Paracelsus suggests that... let me get back to it. Let's see. How blessed shall be the hour and the poverty. Are we going to be in worldwide famine in 2023? That will come and shall ordain each one to its own meadow, not far from the year 2023 is the suggestion that is meant by that. Oops, you couldn't see that. Let me go back down to that. How blessed shall be the hour and the poverty. Because we know that the Lord is coming. We know we're in poverty for a reason. 2023, the year of great famine, or the kicking off of famine, great famine. Interesting. Again, just like the 7 good years, the 7 bad years in Egypt, where Joseph was a type of Christ and providing for his people during that period. There were 7 good years to store up, and even with storing up, God still needs to provide during those 7 bad years, which are the 7 years that we understand is spoken of in Daniel, about the time when the Antichrist comes, rules and reigns for a period, 3.5 years, and then again sets up the abomination of desolation in the 3rd temple. Maybe a future fulfillment or a double fulfillment of the abomination of desolation prophecy in the rebuilt 3rd temple, and that triggers the wrath of God to come. So, you let me know in the comments if you think that's accurate or not. Blessed are those that are going to be in that hour, that are going to see the coming of the Lord, and the poverty, because we recognize that Jesus Christ is coming soon. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll leave it there. You let me know in the comments what you think of that one.